was listening to a person online yesterday, and this person was very critical of John MacArthur, who has opposed, and quite rightly so, this Manhattan Declaration. And if you haven't heard of this Manhattan Declaration, it is an update of the ECT document in many ways, evangelical and Catholics together. And MacArthur, to his credit, did oppose the ECT document, and he's also opposed the Manhattan Declaration. However, what has caused some ripples in the evangelical community, quote unquote, is that John MacArthur has a man called Dr. Muller going to his Shepherd's Conference this coming week. And these conferences, I think, run at least once a year. They are only open to paid ministers. So if you're not a minister, if you're not paid, then you won't get a look in. This Muller thinks that the Manhattan Declaration is a good idea, and he has signed it. He thinks it's wonderful. He thinks that Catholics and Protestants and Orthodox and all the other religious crowd are all Christians, quote unquote, and therefore they are not to be evangelized by those of us that do know the Lord. John MacArthur had a letter written to him about this Dr. Muller, and he hasn't backed down. In fact, he says it's something which MacArthur and Muller have agreed to disagree on. Now, this isn't an issue which we can just sweep under the carpet. This is an important subject, and the person who has raised this has written to MacArthur on 2 occasions, and he's asked others to write to MacArthur too. Now, I thought, on the one hand, it was a little naive of this speaker in the States, this church leader, to think that MacArthur would capitulate. MacArthur's been around a long time. Apparently on his headed paper he says he's been 40 years a faithful preacher, quote unquote. Where do you start when somebody puts something like that on their headed paper? But anyway, MacArthur hasn't backed down, and Muller is going to be speaking at Grace Church this coming Wednesday. Now, why do I mention all of this? Well, it does unfortunately go back to one of our main concerns, one of our main beefs at this ministry: organised religion. When we talk about organised religion, we are not only talking about the Roman Catholic Church or the Protestant Church or the Orthodox Church, but we are talking about paid ministers, deacons, pastors, elders, bishops, whatever title you care to give them. When you have a group of people who are paid a salary to teach their congregation the Bible, that is organised religion. I was talking to a friend of mine just before Christmas, a faithful brother in the Lord, a good street preacher, and he told me that he goes to a church which for many years had a couple of elders who had secular jobs, and they were among the teachers who fed this church week in, week out. This individual, one of the elders, has now retired from his secular job, and his church are now desperate to retain him. I don't quite know why, but anyway, he's been offered, I think it was £30,000 a year to be their pastor, quote unquote. The salary was knocked down to £20,000 a year. I don't know why they couldn't agree over £10,000, but anyway, he's now working for £20,000 a year. Now, I have a huge problem with this, and the brother I was talking to also thinks it's wrong too. This pastor does Sunday services, a midweek Bible study, and I suppose if you're lucky, a Thursday night prayer service. The rest of his week is his own. The people in his church, for the most part, are working people. Some are doing 2 jobs, and they are subsidising their pastor, quote unquote. I know of a woman, and I've told this story before, and I'm going to tell it again in case you haven't heard it, but I know of a woman who is a bus driver, and bus drivers in the UK don't get paid a lot of money, and I've only met her a couple of times, so I will give her the benefit of the doubt and say that she is saved. And this woman that I know, in a loose sort of way, you understand, but this woman that I know and I've met on 2 occasions, tithes to Benny Hinn's ministry. And of course, if you haven't heard, Benny Hinn is the biggest heretic probably of them all, along with Todd Bentley, and he's also going through a very messy divorce like Todd Bentley. So once again, these charismatics are nothing more than charlatans in sheep's clothing. But anyway, This woman tithed to Benny Hinn's ministry, and a friend of mine, when he heard this, was appalled, and he pulled her up on this. He challenged her. At first she was a bit bemused at why she couldn't tithe to this $200 million a year ministry, whereas this woman probably gets about $15,000 to $16,000 a year and works about 50 plus hours. This brother challenged her a couple more times until she got very embarrassed, and last I heard she officially isn't tithing to Benny Hinn's ministry. Now listen, let's make this quite clear. These people, Benny Hinn, Todd Bentley, Joyce Meyer, Kenneth Hagin, all of these people are from the pit of hell. They are not Christians, they are false brethren. And because of people like you who support these ministries, you are going to be sharing in their damnation. Because without you, these people could not exist. Okay? Back to John MacArthur. MacArthur's been around a long time, as I say. Officially, he's not ecumenical. But we know in the past that he has worked with people who we don't support, people who we don't agree with. Hank Hanegraaff, for example, says that he plays golf with John MacArthur. Now, Hank Hanegraaff doesn't live in California anymore. He lives in North Carolina. But for many years, he did live in California. He used to play golf with John MacArthur. Hank Hanegraaff is very ecumenical. I used to listen to his program many years ago, and although he says that you're saved through faith in Christ alone, when Catholics would phone up, he would say, you are my brother or you are my sister in the Lord, and our disagreements shouldn't get in the way. That is a huge farce. It's a huge compromise. The Catholic Church has always anathematized sola fide, faith alone. They've even anathematized the Magna Carta, which is no longer applicable. It's been changed by all of the laws that the governments over the years have brought in. So MacArthur is happy to play golf with Hanegraaff, so why are you surprised if he's working with Dr. Muller? Why does it even concern you? It doesn't concern me. I'm not surprised at all. Also keep in mind that MacArthur's a paid pastor. He gets a lot of money. He also hires his daughter, Melinda, to run his office, and no doubt other members of the family work for him too. He has a church board, as all of these churches have to have, and I'm told that friends and family are on the board. It's a very cosy setup. Because these guys have never lived in the real world, because these guys never had jobs for the most part, they can't relate to the average man or woman in the pew. Now, I've been critical for many years about the Catholic Church. I've told people over the years, when I was a Catholic, we used to see priests standing outside after Mass, lining up for money to be put in their pockets to say Masses for dead relatives, so much so that notes would fall on the ground. That, of course, is wrong. These priests, for the most part, have gone to junior seminary, into their 7-year seminary, and then they are full-time pastors, quote-unquote. I don't believe in it. And the follow-up video I'm going to do will be on paid ministry. What is a church? What is a proper church? MacArthur is an organised religion, and for that we oppose him. The late Dr. J. Vernon McGee was very critical of organised religion. In fact, he would say that it was one of the devil's greatest inventions. But Dr. J. Vernon McGee was a paid pastor. So that's double standards. If you're in an organised church, if you're in a system which has pastors and deacons and elders who are paid a salary, then you are in organised religion. You can't criticise it, people. That's hypocrisy. If you come out of organised religion, then fine. You have grounds to be critical, but if you are in organised religion, then button it. You can't speak out against it because it supports you, and in reality you've been living off your brothers and sisters in the Lord for many, many years. You've done very well, and a friend of mine used to call these pastors parasites. He called them thieves, which is quite a strong term, but he felt strongly about it, as I do too. MacArthur, Grace Church, have also had Dave Hunt speak in their church before, and many Calvinists who watch these videos consider Dave Hunt to be the Antichrist. It's what we call the religious system. It's what we call the Tor circuit. I've told you before about Walter Martin praying with Mitch Orpakwa, a Jesuit priest, and also fellowshipping with Hal Lindsey, who's been married many times. John Hagee, David Jeremiah, I don't care who you name, they're all in the religious system, and they've all done very well out of organised religion. And I find it absolutely sickening that these people have the audacity to then criticise religion when it's given them a very good living over the years. MacArthur, finally, also spends 40 hours a week reading and studying his Bible to give these long sermons, dissertations, what have you, which apparently feeds his church. I would rather he had a proper job. I'd rather that John Hagee, David Jeremiah, and I'm not just picking on John MacArthur, but I'd rather that all these guys had proper secular jobs, and then in their own time would study the Bible and teach it to their faithful church members. They won't do it, of course, because it's very lucrative and it keeps these guys in pocket. So I have no time for this Manhattan Declaration, no time for the ECT document, I have no time for John MacArthur, Peter Ruttman, or any of these guys, and if it surprised you, then shame on you.